Okay, Catherine, welcome. It's so lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Abundance Club.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to start with you are a business coach and a business astrologer. So it's like this pairing together of business with astrology, which I think is particularly cool. And I'm really excited to dive into that. I always feel that on this journey, on this spiritual journey, we're prepared in life. We kind of have our initiation, the lessons we go through, and all of those kind of things that we waken up to. And that prepares us, I believe, for what's to come. And it feels like you are very much in your soul purpose and in alignment with your soul purpose. So I'd love for you to share how you got there, or was there a particular awakening point that got you to this place of realizing that, yeah, okay, this is what I'm here to do. I'm going to blend these two together. Like, I'm interested to know how you got to that place to
Ah,
start with.
sure. So I've been in business for about 14 years now. Um, but my first iteration of the business was quite different to what I do now. But before I started my business, I had a commercial corporate job. But I think after I had my daughter, I just had this realization that I wasn't remotely passionate about what I did.
Mm.
And I didn't get to be creative at all in this commercial role. And I just can remember thinking, I don't want to wake up. And that was the words I used in my head. I don't want to wake up in another 10 years and still be doing this. And I think also, if you choose to have children, once you have children, I think often for women, it does make us go, if I'm going to be away from them, I want to make sure I'm doing work that is really meaningful. So it was kind of combination of that. Then, I had a boss just do something stupid at work and, all of those little things that compound. And I decided that I wanted to um, study something that I could do from home, that I could turn into a business, do from home, and really have a lot of flexibility and freedom. And so I ended up deciding between coaching or graphic design, because I love creative stuff as well. And so I decided to study coaching, went off and did that. Um, I then actually was a corporate trainer right at the end of my corporate career, um, and started creating offerings for, I call them mumpreneurs then, but mums in business. It was the market that I knew. I understood women wanting to have more freedom and flexibility. So I started creating courses for them. And then they started saying to me, so online courses, they
Mm.
started saying to me, can you teach us how to create online courses? And so I created this course that I wasn't expecting much, I thought it would do just as well as any of the other things I created. And it just took off. It did super well. It earned over $1 million in revenue. And I think it was like a great idea at the right time. It was very early on. There weren't many other people at all teaching how to create online courses back then.
Mm.
And so I just kind of rode that wave for a while. I was really successful, but within a few years, kind of that nagging feeling was back that I kind of had when I was in corporate of like, this is not it. This is not what you're meant to do with your life. Like you're good at it, like you were good at your corporate job, but it's not. And from a really young age, I had a sense of life purpose and that your life was meant to have a purpose and you're meant to do work you loved. Um, and so I knew that I wanted to go deeper with my clients. I knew that I wanted to somehow bring something more soulful into it. However, I hadn't even been on my own journey at that point, so I didn't know what that was. And I just kind of asked the universe, like, send me something. I need a teacher. I need someone to help me navigate this. And then, yeah, a program called Soul Leader School came up. Another Australian, Melissa Sandon, and I did her program, and then that led into a soul and energy medicine practitionership, and I did that. I still hadn't quite found, I enjoyed it, but
Mm.
I hadn't had that moment of this is my thing. And then one of the women that I did the practitionership with enrolled a year-long astrology training. And I didn't know why I was signing up to it. I didn't, yeah, I just knew that I felt called. I'd loved astrology in high school. I'd loved learning about all the mythology, which astrology is so linked with in high school. And I was just like, let's just do this. And within a week, I knew it was my thing. Within a week of studying it, I
Mm.
was like, yes, this is the thing that I was meant to do with my life and I am meant to do with my life. And I just loved it. And so then I found myself in this place where I had this really very successful business, but it didn't light me up anymore.
Mm.
And I had been through a spiritual awakening and I had to work out how the hell was I going to transition from this very traditional strategy business oriented business into something that was a lot more soulful. And it was messy. Like, I just have to be honest, it was really messy. Um, I probably swung too far the other way for a little while in
Mm.
terms of way more mystical or soulful than is me. And what I came to realize was that my gift is my ability to merge both. I'm still a business coach, I'm still a strategist, I'm still incredibly practical, but I'm also very soulful and intuitive. So
Mm.
it's just
I
like,
love that.
yeah.
I think that that is, I think that that's a balance that many find difficult to strike. And I
Mm,
know that particularly when it comes to business and being an entrepreneur, and we can tend to very much get caught up in the masculine way of being very focused on the strategy. And
yeah.
I'm speaking from my own experience, having been in business for 15 years myself and running in a
Yeah.
particular way, and then realizing that, because I'm an intuitive guide as well, is for me connecting with that soul. But then we can go, as you said, we can go too far into the other, into the ethereal.
Mm,
And how how do we find, like, how do you feel that we really find that happy medium and that meeting place where our strategy is guided or very much infused by our soul? And how, I guess, have you found astrology has helped? I'm assuming astrology has helped you to
yeah.
find that meeting place. Can you speak to that a little bit about how we can harness that to
Mm.
find that happy medium where it's more soul infused action rather than action for the sake of action, because we're programmed to feel that that's what we need to do in the business world?
Yeah, so I think it reminds me of when I first started my business, and the majority of the teachers out there were like bro marketers who probably didn't have kids and, or had a wife at home doing everything for them, and very like hustle oriented approach.
Yeah.
Women don't actually really work that way. We're much more cyclical. We need to ebb and flow with our energy. And so yeah, I think I fell into the trap of doing it that masculine way. I then ended up with adrenal fatigue 2 years in a row, totally burnt out. And it was only when I reconnected with astrology and I started infusing astrology into my life, which really is all about cycles. Even if you just look at working with the new moon and the full moon, if you look at moon phases, the yin and yang phases, it's about, yeah, the ebb and flow of energy. Virtually as soon as I started working with astrology in my life, the adrenal fatigue went away. Like, it just
Mm.
disappeared because I wasn't, in full throttle hustle mode all of the time. It was this beautiful balanced energy. Um, and then astrology, this has really come through all the programs that I've developed since then. But astrology is such a specific and unique roadmap for each of us that it really gives us everything we need to know about how we take action, how we best are magnetic and receive, how we shine our light, how we connect with other people. So once we can learn about all these things about ourselves, we can then like create businesses that work to our strengths, manage any challenges, and just feel really authentic and aligned. And so, my journey has really just been continuing to just align and align and align to my
Yeah.
astrology, and now starting to really work with my business chart as well, so that I'm not just aligning to my own energy, but I'm aligning to the energy that my business has, because it has its own energy. I'm part of that, but it also has its own energy signature. So yeah, it's just been this beautiful, process of learning more about myself, but then having a much more successful and healthier and balanced business as a result.
Can you speak to that piece around the business having its own chart or identity?
Yeah.
Because I find that that's fascinating rather than thinking about, I mean, I guess our business is an extension of that, but
Mm,
considering it as its own being with its own, can you
yeah.
speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I really believe our business does have its own energy and identity. I think that we are typically the primary driver behind the business, but whether you have team members or not, you're still going to need help with different things in your business. So you'll have service providers. You'll have your clients that interact with the business. You have the broader environment that interacts with the business. And then if you have team members, so there's all of these different energies that are kind of coming into the business. And yeah, I believe that our business has its own purpose, its
Mm.
own, most aligned offerings. So, uh, what I teach my students is firstly align with your own natal chart so you know what is going to work for you personally, but then look at your business chart and understand, well, how do I best support the business, but what else does the business need that perhaps I
Mm.
don't have? And yeah, how can we combine the two energies for a really sustainable business? So I teach my students to focus on an energetically resonant time that they feel the business was created, which is different for everyone.
Mm.
My approach isn't like it must be the date you registered the business name or anything like that, because I think that different businesses are born in different ways. For some people, they woke up in the middle of the night with the flash of brilliance, or they were in the shower one morning and the idea came to them. For
Mm.
others, it felt real when they got their first paying client, or it might be when you pressed publish on your website. Like, it's whatever feels energetically resonant for you, I believe, is when the birth of that business is. So, I guide my students on how to select the best time, and then guide them on how to work with that energy and what it means for their branding and their offerings and a whole lot of different things.
That's amazing. And like so much goodness there. So let's now talk about then, because you created this astrology deck,
Hmm.
business astrology deck,
Yeah.
right? Oracle deck. So was this part of being able to have something like, what was the intention behind that? Having worked with business clients, having supporting them to infuse and understand more about astrology placement and so forth to help them to launch and to do soul-led strategy and all of this. How does the business oracle deck come into it, and what can people who use this expect to receive, like the kind of guidance that they can expect to receive?
Yeah, so I had wanted to create an Oracle deck since about year one in my business. As a bit of background, I was brought up in a Catholic family, not at all like spiritually oriented. My mum would have scoffed at, mystical shops and all of that. So I had no exposure to that growing up.
Mm.
And so I came to it much later in life and saw these Oracle decks that people were producing, and I just loved them. And I can remember thinking within about year one of my business, like one day I want to create my own Oracle deck. So it'd been sitting there for a long time, but the right concept hadn't come to me. And then as I started building my own approach to business astrology and really grounding it, as far as I know, I'm the only person that's created a certification level training in business astrology. So
Mm.
I really started grounding this framework, and I just realized that this was the perfect topic for an oracle deck because no one else had done there are astrology decks out there, but no business astrology decks.
Mm,
And
mm,
it felt like the perfect time because we're in this like digital boom where, you know, virtually anyone can create their own business. So there's so many entrepreneurs out there now, and there's a really large portion of female soulful entrepreneurs. And I just felt like it was an amazing time to create a deck that was created for entrepreneurs and creatives. So it had business specific guidance, and was also aligned to astrology. Um, but in terms of like further than that, I knew it would be a great learning tool for my students. So I already had
mm,
number of cohorts that had been through my level 1 and level 2 certification. And I just thought, well, this is a great learning tool for them because I was encouraging them already to buy astrology oracle decks and pull a card each day just to reinforce the archetypes of the zodiac, the houses, the planets. So I thought, well, this will be great. This is a way for them to learn my business astrology framework in a more fun, interactive way. So that was part of its use. And then, I mean, it's funny, I'm just discovering more and more uses of it, to be honest,
mm,
even through this launch process with Hay House, coming up with different trainings. You know, so there's a whole lot of different ways that I teach my students how to use it, like down to like actually recreating their chart using the cards on the floor and then, you
mm,
know, having more of an experiential experience moving through their chart. I've got processes for helping people really understand placements in their chart using the cards. It just provides a more intuitive way to tune in to the energy in our charts
mm.
and to learn how to work with both, you know, the more challenging aspects in our chart, but also the more positive ones. So yeah, it's just become an amazing tool on so many levels. And it's a great intuitive tool just to pull the card every day before
Mm.
you start work for the day and to get some beautiful guidance related to your business. So
I love that. I'm a big Oracle card. I mean, I don't use them to the level that I used to use them. So I rely a lot more on, other kind of areas of my intuition. However, I do still pull a card most days. And I think for someone that is an entrepreneur and is in business, we can get really overwhelmed by all of the things that we feel like we need to do.
yeah,
Like sometimes I'll just write down a whole list of the things that I feel like I would need to do that day. And I'll tune into my soul and I go straight to soul and check what is it? What is it that I need to do? Like, what is the priority here? And honestly, most often there might be one or two things on that list
yeah,
that might have 10 things on it, right? Like
yeah,
we tend to, in our humanness, overcomplicate things so much and we kind of feel that our worth is dependent on what we accomplish. So I can imagine having something like that, particularly if it's attuned more to business, where you can just, tap into, okay, what is it that I need to know now? What is it today without getting too far ahead? Because I believe that we're completely guided in what we're meant to do here. There's a level of it being already mapped out, as I'm sure
yeah.
you would agree as well.
Mhm.
Where do you feel? I think that this is an interesting conversation when we look at astrology and there's a level of placement. So there's a level of destiny there, right? Um, where is this meeting point between that and, say, conscious co-creation, conscious manifestation? Can you
Mm.
speak to that? Like, do you find that you can find a place where you can really harness the two together?
Yeah, so I think that our astrology chart speaks to potential,
Yeah.
and we can either realize that potential or choose not to realize that potential. So I think it speaks to what are some of the most aligned things for you to do in your life? What are some of the challenges you're going to have? What are some of the strengths? And so, yeah, what this high level purpose is, you know, there are placements in our astrology chart that speak to our soul purpose. There are also placements that speak to past life karmic energy. So there's a whole lot of potential there, but we still have to decide that we want to do something with that potential. And then I think if we do decide we want to do something with it, the chart then provides us guidance on, as I said, some of the challenges we might come up against, how best to achieve it. But there are ultimately within that, there are still loads of ways we can live that out.
Mm.
So, when I speak to clients about their chart, it's not like this is the only thing you can or should do. There's generally a lot of possibilities within what the chart is telling us. So it is a matter of tuning in to your intuition. And I can, yeah, facilitate that with clients. But I think being really tuned into yourself and what is true for you is really important as well. And then, of course, we have different times of our life where opportunities are going to be easier, kind of like when the Oracle deck happened for me with Hay House. I didn't really have to work very hard at all for this amazing opportunity to come to me. I mean, obviously, I'd done the work to create the deck, but it did come very easily. And, you know, that's because there are different astrological factors at play around that time. So there are different points in life where, yeah, we are going to be able to create things with the universe, because it's aligned timing for us.
What do you think? What are those kind of key placements that really influence business? Or let's say there's someone who's really wanting to either accelerate their business or shift into more of a soul-led purpose for those who are feeling unfulfilled in what they're doing and want to tap more into what am I here for? I want to make a difference and I want to be expressed in the world in my purpose. What are some of the main factors or placements that you could look into to start to get some of that guidance around that?
So the highest level placement is the North Node in terms of purpose. The North Node is not an actual planet. It's a calculated position in our chart, and it measures where the sun and the moon's orbit intersected at the exact time that we were born. And then we get this North Node placement. And so it will be in a certain sign and a certain house. It might be close to some other planets. It might be making certain aspects in our chart. And all of that information can actually really tell us what our soul purpose is. So I have a Leo North Node in the 11th house. So Leo is very creative. And again, I said to you earlier, the only thing in my head was I just want to do something more creative. When I decided to start a business, well, that was my Leo North Node kind of going, hey, I'm over here. Like what are we doing here? Pay attention to me. Leo also wants to be seen and heard. So it was also important that I had a job or a business that allowed me to shine in that Leo energy, allow me to be expressive and creative. And then it's in the 11th house of groups and community. So ever since I've started my business, I've always created group programs and I've brought together communities of women typically. And it's, yeah, my moon is also in the 11th house. I have a Cancer moon, so it's always been this feminine energy as well to it. So the North Node gives us that high level view of what are you meant to be doing with your life. Now, there's multiple possibilities there. Like a Leo North Node in the 11th house could have been running creative art workshops for groups of people, right? Because Leo is very artistic energy. Could have been to do with acting because Leo also rules acting. So there's always lots of possibilities. That's where your intuition has to come in of
And
what
it's
to
still
do.
in that creativity and that expression, right?
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
very Leo energy.
Yeah. For me, all of the courses I write and the programs, that's my creative energy. My creative energy is more of a writing based, and then teaching creative energy. But yeah, that's different for everyone. So that's really high level. But what I found, and I found it with myself, but also with my students, often the North Node, it's just too high level. Like we're almost yeah, I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of get it, but like, what does that really mean practically? And I'm a very practical Virgo rising person. So what I then looked at was I created this process where we then look at the ruler of the North Node and where that is in the chart. So every sign has a planetary ruler. So Leo's planetary ruler is the sun. So then I found my sun in my chart. That's in the third house in Sagittarius, which is writing, speaking, and teaching. Sagittarius is the teacher or the guide. So now it's starting to make a lot more sense why my sole purpose is, teaching and writing groups of people, being the teacher, the guide. Then my sun is conjunct Uranus. Uranus rules astrology. So we can
Mm,
start telling this story once we start looking into these placements in a bit more depth. But
so cool.
ultimately, North Node is like the big picture, sole
Yeah,
purpose.
the big
You know,
vision. Why am I here? So that's a great thing for people to tap into and just get some information. And I'd imagine for people when they are feeling like they're coming back into alignment in that way, it's just that confirmation, right? Like we have
yeah.
it all there via
Mhm.
and this is why I always say to my clients, like your desires are giving you information.
Yeah.
They are guidance from your soul, acting on your passion, acting on what excites you, acting on what feels good and what you're called towards is you serving your highest purpose, right? So I
And they're
love
so
that.
intuitive. They know.
Yeah.
Like they actually know, but we're not always very good at trusting ourselves. So when my clients come to me, typically I'm just confirming
Yeah.
what they already know based on their chart, and almost giving them permission. Of course, it's not mine to give them, but sometimes they
Yeah.
feel like they need someone to say, yes, that's right, you're on the right track. But yeah, we're just so
It's
intuitive
just that
anyway.
beautiful confirmation, which I just think is so important. I mean, we're in times that are very squeezy, I would say, right? And it feels like that's only going to continue to accelerate as we're awakening here. And so to have something that just gives you that confirmation that is just steering you, saying, keep going, trust in yourself and keep going is so beautiful. So then when we're looking at then the moon placements throughout the month, and how that relates to business. Is there a general guide around like new moon is great for this in business, full moon with this? Like, can you speak a little bit about that, realizing that we're in the energy of the new moon today?
Mhm.
And even
Yeah.
speak to like what could that mean at the moment in this last month of the year before we move into 2025 for people that are interested in this with their business?
Well, firstly, it's new moon in Sagittarius, and I mean, I'm a Sag sun, so I love this energy. But I think the new moon in Sagittarius is an amazing point towards the end of the year to actually start visioning for the new year. So, it's kind of like that time before the craziness of Christmas and New Year kicks off, but to start tuning in and thinking about what do I want next year to hold? Where do I want to focus? What are my visions for New Year? And actually, this morning I was doing this big, like, full annual year calendar planning, which is kind of perfect for that Sag new
Mm,
moon because it's like, what are all the. So I was putting in travel I wanted to do and, launches I want to do and, just all of the things. So that visioning for that energy for the year is amazing for a Sagittarius new moon. Also great for booking or planning any travel for the new year. Sagittarius is like the wanderer of the zodiac. So definitely a great time for booking travel or planning travel. Um, Really good for study. So Sagittarius loves to learn. So if you've got and Jupiter's also retrograde at the moment, so it's a really good time for going back on like, and we've probably all done it, courses we bought but that we haven't finished, right? Or we haven't done. It's a really good time. Sagittarius season generally, when the sun is in Sagittarius, is a great time for study as well. So there's some of the things around this time that are super helpful. And then every couple of days, the moon is moving into a new sign. So every sign that the moon is in is good for different activities. So we can actually plan our week and our month based on, depending on how flexible our business is, we can plan like to coach on certain days based on what sign the moon is in. So we might decide to do coaching on days when the moon is in Cancer or,
mm,
something like that. And then we have the moon phases. So we can plan our month around perhaps the most important actions being during the yang phases and also the waxing phases. So the moon, when it's waxing, it's growing in size and energy, and when it's waning, it's diminishing. So this is, I think, one of the things that actually stopped me from getting adrenal fatigue, rather than perhaps like going hard for a month on a launch. Now I'll just do the 2 weeks from the new moon to the full moon. And even within those 2 weeks, I'll then narrow in on the new moon, the first quarter moon, and the full moon for like the big launch activities. And it's just meant that I'm just so much more in balance. It's not
Mm.
go, go, go all of the time. It's really learning to align my activities with the moon.
So that would be more kind of this building. So you're working with that building energy in terms of
Yeah.
putting things out there into the
Mm,
world. So I guess that's, planting the seeds and putting these things
yeah.
out there. So then post full moon in that waning, what would you be more focused on within your business during that period?
So typically when I'm planning a launch, I'll promote like the free opt-in or something like that, or a webinar or something I'm doing around the new moon. And then around the first quarter moon, I might open up that free training or run that free training. Then, as we're getting to the full moon, the culmination point, you kind of have the last push of the launch, or perhaps it might be a discount ending or something like that. But it's a real culmination point. So it's a point where you can see a lot of sales during that time as well. And
Mm.
then I typically close my launches a day or two after the full moon. You want to harness the full amount of the full moon energy. But also, I was born the phase just after the full moon, and I often find my natal phase is a really good time for me. I feel like I'm even more magnetic in my natal phase. So I'll tend to close the launch after that phase. And then it's things like, well, firstly, it's rest, because normally you've worked quite hard, you've held a lot of energy during a launch. So, like rest and recovery, reviewing how did the launch go, what worked, what didn't work. And just, yeah, really just building your energy back up, because if it's a live program, you've then got to go and deliver the program. So I don't go straight from launching into delivery. I always give myself a little bit of a break, at least a week, so that when I do then go to deliver the course, I'm not exhausted from launching.
Yeah, yeah.
I've actually built my energy back up, because that's what people deserve. They don't deserve to get you exhausted from launching when they've paid you for that offering. So,
I love that. I was like taking notes because they're just, intuitively that makes so much sense. And, I kind of also like this idea of working for a couple of weeks and then actually just taking a pause and rest. And I know for me in human design, I'm a projector, and it's taken me a bit to really understand the benefit and the importance of sacred rest,
yeah.
right? Like, in order to, because I'm a creative as well, it's like in order to create. And it's a very feminine approach. I don't believe, particularly as women, I don't believe, well, and men, but I work a lot with women, but I don't believe that we give ourselves enough of that space to be in the pause in between
Mm,
and to celebrate, but to celebrate by really giving ourselves that time as well to rest. And I
yeah.
feel like that's really in tune with the moon. Like the moon's cycles are teaching us that all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a season and it's
I
not a
do feel
season.
like men have a greater capacity to just keep going for longer periods of time. You might even look at the way my husband works.
Mm.
I do believe that the masculine and feminine energy is different. And overall, when I work with women, they come to me and they're burnt out because they've been trying to do hustle culture, which is not really the way our bodies and souls everything works. And
Mm.
so it's actually often it's about helping women to what's the word? Just like rewrite that conditioning
Yeah.
they've been
Yeah.
given about, and that's partly why I left corporate as well, like the 9 to 5. Like I can remember having bosses say to me, "Oh, Kathryn, some days you're just on fire, you get so much done. And other days I feel like you don't do anything."
Well,
And
welcome to
that
my
was,
world. That's me.
yeah. So, but that was a bad thing, right? That I wasn't consistent.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
actually, that's how women's bodies and energies work. We are
Mm.
cyclical. So, yeah, I think it's so powerful. As I said, I stopped getting adrenal fatigue once I started aligning with astrology in this way. So that was all the evidence I needed, really.
Yeah, yeah. And just giving yourself, as you said before, with, giving your clients that permission. And you're absolutely right. No one needs that permission, but sometimes we actually do. We need someone to hold space for us to say, you
Yeah.
know what, it's okay. And you're worthy just as you are, and you're worthy of this
Hmm.
rest, and you're worthy to follow your heart and pursue your dreams. And it's all available there, right?
Yeah.
As you said, these are our charts are showing us the potentials, and there's
Yeah.
vast potential. And then it's up to us to attune to, okay, then what is it? What is it that my soul is calling me towards? And how can I harness that energy to do that? So I feel like there's so much support there. And I've
Mm.
really utilized astrology over time with having readings from time to time, checking in with an
Mm.
astrologer to just kind of veers you back on track a little bit, or gives
Yeah,
you that support that
absolutely.
you need to back yourself and to feel empowered in what you're doing.
Mm.
So cool. So this is the Abundance Club. So when it comes to, and I'm all about supporting women to really let in, right? Let in, because abundance isn't something that we're seeking. It's our nature, and it's who we are. It's inherent within us. And a lot of the time for women, it's about giving ourselves that permission again,
Yeah.
um, to expand our capacity to be a receiver for that which is here and available to us. And I love how you were sharing with me earlier that you self-published the Oracle deck,
Hmm.
but then there was an effortlessness that came
Yeah.
through, right? Like that it was just able to find you, probably because you're in a position where you were able to receive it as well. There weren't
Yeah.
those barriers. So let's talk about this in terms of abundance then, and not even wealth abundance. I mean, there's the money abundance as well, but abundance is a lot more expansive than that.
Mm.
Um, how does it support us? And what can you offer there in terms of for people who are listening, like, I really want to accelerate or amplify the abundance that I've got in my life right now. How can our chart and astrology support
Mm.
us with that mostly?
So there's lots of abundance and money indicators in the chart. So I have a whole course that I created around money astrology because there's just so many things that we can look at. So
Mm.
we have two signs in the zodiac that are what we call money signs. So we have Taurus and Scorpio, and they both rule houses in the chart that are money houses, which is the second house and the eighth house. So there are particular signs and houses in our chart that can tell us about our money signatures, our money blocks, our
Mm.
money like opportunities or strengths. So typically we start looking at what's going on in the second house and the eighth house. So there might be planets in your second house or eighth house, but it's also what sign is ruling your second house or eighth house. So the second house I call the entrepreneurial house because it's all about how we use our strengths and talents to create resources. And I think this is what the new wave of digital entrepreneurs have been able to do. We've been able to take strengths and talents that we've picked up perhaps in previous jobs or training we've done or things we're passionate about, and we've then been able to create money from them in a way that previous generations just couldn't do it as easily. And so the second house is all about that. So I think the second house can tell us a lot about how aligned or otherwise we are to running our own business,
Mm.
and also what type of business, how we can best earn money. The eighth house is other people's money. So it's money that comes in from spouses, inheritances. It can be investors in our business, other partners in our business. It can be money, like, for example, with my publishing deal, money that's come from the publisher as an
Yeah.
advance. So it rules all the other ways that money can come into our life. So again, we can look to what planets are in that house, and they can tell us a bit of a story about that. We can also look to where the money signs, as I said before, are in our chart and which house they rule in our chart, because that can give us some more insight into how we attract that money into our life.
Mm.
And then the money planets we specifically look to, and abundance planets. Well, Venus rules money specifically. So where Venus is in our chart can tell us a lot about our most aligned way to make money, or the most easeful way for us to make money, depending on where it is in our chart. Jupiter is abundance more broadly. So Jupiter rules over really all forms of expansion and abundance. So it's also a very strong, obviously, money and abundance indicator in our chart. So we can look where Jupiter is.
Mm.
And another interesting one. So astrological research has shown that some of the wealthiest, the millionaires and the billionaires in the world, they typically have a really positive relationship between their Mars and their Saturn. So, by positive relationship in astrology, we have aspects between planets based on how far away they are from each other. And the positive aspects are trines and sextiles. And it's been shown that in charts of like the uber wealthy, they tend to have a trine or a sextile between their Saturn and their Mars. Now, Saturn is all about structure, discipline, hard work. It's realism as well. And Mars is action taking and bravery. And when these two planets are like playing nice in our chart, it means there's this beautiful energy flow between having the responsibility and the discipline and the follow through, and then the courage and the bravery and the action taking. And so those two planets are also quite important when it comes to how easily, particularly for entrepreneurs where you do need to be quite self-directed and driven, how easily or otherwise we can create more of the financial forms of abundance as well. But then we also have, sorry,
No. I was just going to ask.
placement.
No, I was just going to ask. So the sextile and the trine is basically like it's a good relationship. They get along.
Yeah. So it's based on a certain degrees of difference between them. And so they're either 2 signs apart or 4 signs apart in the chart. And yeah, they're basically, if you look at a chart, you'll see blue lines and red lines. The red lines are the challenging ones, and the blue lines are the more harmonious ones. And so yeah, we're looking for those blue lines in our chart.
So the blue lines are the challenging.
No, the blue are
The
the
blue, the good,
harmonious.
the red. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I've like written all of these notes because this is so cool. I feel like everyone that's like in business is going to go and see whether they've got a sextile or a trine.
So obviously, like Venus sextiles and trines and Jupiter sextiles and trines are super supportive, whether it's in your natal chart or your business chart. And then we have other placements like the part of fortune, which is not a planet, it's mathematically calculated. It goes back to quite ancient Arabic astrology. And it's basically a formula based on certain placements in our chart, but it is another place that gives us information on the most easeful way for us to create success and fortune in our lives. And look, there's other like goddess asteroids and, multiple other things we can look to, but they're probably some of the big ticket ones when it comes to abundance.
I love that. It's so cool. There's a lot there, right? Like, so for
Mm,
someone who is thinking, okay, I want to find out what the chart is for my business. I'm assuming the
yeah.
things you're talking about here are in your own chart, or are you specifically looking at within your business chart, or it could
Either
be
you can look
either.
for these
Yeah.
things in either chart.
So for someone that's wanting to find out their business chart, you mentioned before about like having a rough idea about when it's conceived. Does that need
Mm.
to go down to like time and
Ideally, as closely as possible. So I do tend to encourage people to pick something I mean, firstly, it being energetically resonant is the most important, but then to try and pick something where there's some way to cross-check that with the time.
Yeah, okay.
So mine was when my husband and I signed documents to incorporate as a company in my accountant's office. Prior to that, I'd had a sole tradership, but it felt like this really big deal that suddenly, like I'd done well enough, we were big enough that we were going to be a company. He was the director. We went out and we celebrated afterwards. It just felt very resonant to me. And to actually find the time, I had to go back and find the timestamp on a Facebook or Instagram post that I'd made years before. Of because I can remember the accountant went out to photocopy the documents, and I said to my husband, "Right, you need to take a photo for Instagram or whatever." And that's how I found the precise
Right.
time.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
but you might have like an email confirmation if you're going with a business name registration or something like that. If it's your
Mm-mm.
website, you might be able to go back with your web host and get that information. So the closer that you can get it, the better, because there are things that change, minute to minute with charts. So
And
yeah,
I
the
guess
closer
you
the
could
better.
be like nuanced within your business as well and go like this is a particular signature offering that I've launched or
Yeah.
when I launched my podcast because that's an entity of its own as well within the umbrella of your business, right?
Yeah, I have charts for all sorts of things. I mean, I've got
Yeah.
obviously my overarching business chart, but I've got charts for when the Oracle Deck contract was signed with Hay House,
Mm.
that tell me, kind of about the birth of that offering. So yeah, you can, and I will also electional astrology looks at actually preempting things and picking the best time to do a certain activity. So you can
Sure.
actually work with astrology to, yeah, find the best possible timing for things. And then, launch something. Or, like, for example, I'm doing my book proposal, and I'll decide when I press send on that email based on the best possible astrological
Sure.
timing for that overall.
Yeah, just preempting it. Beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I feel like I have learned so much. So I'm sure my listeners have as well. Okay, so tell me about where people can find you and purchase this deck because I believe it's on pre-order. It
Yeah,
looks beautiful, by the way, guys. Like it looks really, tell me
thank you.
about who you had that. Yeah, it's just it's so on brand for me. Like I love it. I'm definitely going to get a copy myself because it's just the artwork and the colors and it's got like
Mhm.
some gold embossing. It just looks really
Yeah,
beautiful.
I love
So
it.
where can
I
people
love it.
buy it from and find out
Yeah.
more about you and your offerings?
So my website is kathrynhocking.com, and on the homepage or on the menu bar, you'll be able to click through to the Oracle deck. On the Oracle deck sales page, there are different options. So for the Australians, the best option is buying from Amazon Australia. But I will say that if you Google it as well, there are some other places that are stocking it. So the Nile and I think Qubit eBooks. And so it's definitely in places other than Amazon. But on the sales page, we kind of have the larger distributors. We also have in the US Barnes and Noble, we have Indigo in Canada, and then we have some other online bookstores as well. So you get an option of these are all kind of the main places to purchase it
Yeah.
from. And
And such a
there's
beautiful idea for Christmas gifts and
yeah, yeah, and then there's actually a heap of bonuses. So if you pre-order before the 30th of December, there's bonuses worth over 200 US dollars that you get. So we've got my Astro launching toolkit that I sell for 97 US dollars. So that actually covers some of the stuff we talked about when I was talking about the best like moon signs to launch under, and the moon phases, and how I actually plan out my launches based on the moon phases. That's included in that toolkit. There's going to be an Astrology of 2025 for your business workshop next year. So that will be an online workshop. So you get access to that, get
amazing.
access to training videos on how to use the Oracle deck. And you get some PDF workbooks and stuff like that as well. So there's some really good bonuses on offer if you pre-order before the 31st of December.
Perfect. I will put all of those details in the show notes as
Awesome.
well. Thank you so much, Kathryn, for your time and for your offering in, because there's a bit that we can take away and then look to go deeper. So for people that are wanting
Yeah.
to understand a little bit more about their own chart or their business chart, and do you do one-to-one sessions yourself, or is it more
Yeah.
you do? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so I'm limited to how many I do each month, but I do have natal chart readings, business chart readings, and year ahead readings on my site. I also teach business astrology through my certification, and I have a business mastermind where we really focus on aligning our business with our astrology and even creating our offerings based on our astrology and all that sort of thing. So there's a few different ways
Beautiful.
that people can work with me.
Yeah, awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much. I have loved this.
Yeah.
And thank you for your time. And I look forward to getting the deck myself and playing with it. And I think that it's so cool how you've merged these worlds of business and astrology, so needed, particularly for entrepreneurs, because we can feel
Mm,
like a little bit untethered at times and
yeah.
not knowing which way to go and what to focus on. So any kind of guidance like that is really beneficial. So thank you so much, Kathryn.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, lovely.